And so when they come back, they're able to describe these things. I'll give you an example. In Holland, um, a man was found unconscious in a park. So he didn't have any heartbeat. He was brought into the ER. They were going to do chest compressions, and the nurse noticed he had dentures. So took the dentures out, put him in the lower drawer of the crash cart, uh, intubated him, and then they shocked his heart. They got it started again, but he never came to in the ER. They wheeled him out to another room. A week later, he becomes conscious and he's missing his dentures and he's complaining about it. And then he sees a nurse and he says, that nurse knows where my dentures are. And then he says, I was right there trying to get everybody's attention. He named who all was in the room, what happened. And when that nurse took his dentures and put them in the lower drawer of the bottle, the cart with all the bottles, he said. And that's where they found them. Now, there are many such observations made. Each NDE may make 5 or 10 observations. So Dr. Janice Holden actually did a study. So she took about 100 patients of cardiac arrest who had claimed to have an NDE, mm-hmm. and listened to their verifiable observations, checked them out. 92% of their observations were 100% accurate. 92%, completely accurate. Another 6% had some variation. 2% were inaccurate. Turns out that was one of the patients in the study. So compared to just regular cardiac arrest who don't claim to have had an NDE, they've also done that as a control group and just asking, what do you think happened in your resuscitation? And they're just guessing. They're just saying what they've seen on ER, not even close. So that's just one, verifiable observations. But that does ground this experience in our reality, right? It grounds it in truth. That for me was like, whoa, okay. If we can believe them about what they say they observed, then why not believe them about what they continued to observe? Okay, second, common elements. So I talk about there are all these common elements. And in my first book, Imagine Heaven, there are about 40 common elements that people report when they have near-death experiences all around the world. And I just went through some of them, but others are like communication that's pure, thought to thought, heart to heart. You know, some describe it as telepathic, but it's more than that. And others talk about things like the light, that the light of heaven comes out of everything. And it's not just light like the sun. It's love and it's life all together. So there are these commonalities. Now, if these near-death experiences are just like Dr. Michael Shermer, who, you know, he's a skeptic, and he says they're just something that happens in the brain. Initially, he said it's the chemical flooding the brain to just ease the fear of dying. But then he realized, okay, that doesn't make sense of the evidence. So now he's saying it is when someone is coming back. It's kind of like when the brain's rebooting, suddenly it's having all these things happen, and that's what they're saying. Well, if it were just in the brain, then why wouldn't it, as a human thing, why wouldn't the elements all be consistent? But they're not. So for instance, a life review, about 32% of near-death experiencers report having a life review. 57% report meeting their deceased loved ones. Okay, but if it's just in the brain, why wouldn't 100% say they met their deceased loved ones?
Sure.
And you could keep going. 48% say they experienced and encountered this God of light and love. Why just 48%? And more telling, and that's what I'm trying to show in Imagine the God of Heaven. Why would people from all different religious backgrounds who had maybe very different expectations, including people who didn't believe there even was a God, experience the same God and describe the same God the same way? So verifiable observations, common elements that just a brain blip doesn't describe. Blind people, when they have a near-death experience, can see. And they report the same things as sighted people and things that they would never have heard on earth. So like I was telling you about the light, they say the light of heaven comes out of everything, right?
Mhm.
Well, blind people say the same thing. I mean, I've interviewed, I think there are three or four in the new book, in Imagine the God of Heaven, and they talk about this light, and in God's presence, this light that is love and that's brighter than the sun, but doesn't feel like the sun. Feels more like love and peace and this overwhelming um, joy that they feel. And then they say light was coming out of the plants and out of the grass and out of the birds and out of the trees and even out of the people. Now, a blind person would never have heard that light shines out of things. That on earth they would have heard, because they can't see, they would have heard light shines on things. So where would they ever get the idea that light shines out of things when you die?